There's a moment every new copper has when it hits you. This is real now. Welcome to the Double Crew podcast, where two ex-police officers crew up again for a shift of real and honest talk on policing and beyond. During this podcast, we may cover sensitive and emotive topics, and in this particular episode, reference will be made to a sudden death. Please stop listening now if you feel you may be affected by this and any of the topics we discuss. We won't be offended. Our opinions are our own and do not necessarily reflect those of serving officers or policing as a whole. This is very much our take on everything policing and more. We are your hosts today. I am Gavin. I've got 15 years policing experience. I left about 10 years ago, joined at the age of 20. And also with us is...
It's me, Steve Grantham, and I joined the police at 20 as well, and I have 10 years experience on the streets as a patrol officer, and before that I spent 4 years in the control room, sort of sending officers to jobs. So I've seen kind of both sides of taking the call from the public to being there to answer the call as well. So hopefully between us, there isn't a lot of things we haven't seen or done, so we can answer a lot of things, and we've got lots to say.
We're going to start with a early turn. There I am. I'm 21 years of age, I believe it was at the time. So I joined at 20. So I was quite a new officer, and there I was getting breakfast, I think it was, with the team. So I'm new, I'm young, I'm trying to impress, I don't want to say the wrong thing, all those things that are
Shiny.
new. Yeah, exactly. Shiny cop. And you're like, I've got to prove myself, right? So there we are. We sit down. Someone's cooked breakfast. I mean, the days when you could get cooked breakfast, right? Like, how often does that happen now? I doubt very much. But we all sat down as a team, and the call comes over from the controller. I don't think it would have been you. I don't know if you were in then.
Who knows? May have been.
Yeah, and it was like, we've got a concern call. Can we send someone? Neighbour hasn't seen the neighbour for a couple of weeks. A little bit concerned because they're, relatively elderly. Can we send someone? And like, I'm thinking, I'm the new guy here. Like, I'll give up my breakfast. That'll
I've got to offer.
I've got to offer. And and in that, no one said. I'm guessing every copper that had years behind them knew what that was going to turn into.
Coming,
yeah. So they were happily eating their breakfast. Oh yeah, I'll go. Don't worry, I'll come back, finish my breakfast. I'm sure, just keep it warm for it, whatever. So I get in the car, drive out. It's not a long drive. And I'm thinking, right, okay, get there. The informant, the person calling the police, was the neighbour. So I knock on the door first of this house, and no response. I thought, okay, no, fair enough. And I sort of walk around the house, looking through windows, can't really see anything. In fact, quite a few of the curtains were closed. Couldn't really see much. So I'll go and knock on the neighbour's door. She answers and she says to me, yeah, haven't seen him. We're not really that close. A little bit concerned because he normally comes out of the day, has a walk or whatever, etc. And I think, oh, no problem. I'm sure there's just some misunderstanding or, some assumption that he's gone walkabout or something.
Yeah.
So I go to the door, knock on the door again, nothing. I'm thinking, right, what do? I don't want to call anyone. I don't want to get any advice. I want to do all this by myself.
Well, and they're all eating breakfast and they'll kick your ass if you interrupt. You better not interrupt.
Yeah, so never ever interrupt a copper eating breakfast.
Yeah.
So there we were. Me and the neighbour. Neighbour goes back and I say, look, I've got this. And I thought, place I haven't looked through is the letterbox. I'll open the letterbox. Anyway, so I remember getting to the letterbox, pulling it open, and then it hit me, right? Yeah. Like, everyone knows that smell.
Yeah.
Right? They do after they've experienced it, right? But you don't, the first time you smell it, it's almost like, sort of the rodents died in the garage, whatever it is. And you're like, God, that's not right. And immediately at that point, I thought, okay, something's not quite right. And I could just about see through the door.
Gave it away.
I sort of through the door. And I'm thinking, is that water? And I can see a dog in a dog near by a door further down the hallway. And it's not barking at me or anything. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm concerned now. There is a smell. We've been told to do sort of sniff test before, that's a good place. So I'm going to do it. I'm just going to kick the door in. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to call out any help. I'm going to do it. Big size 10 boot up. I think someone could be, there's something wrong here. So I
Life
kicked
or
the
limb.
door in. Yeah, kicked it straight in. Save life and limb. You've got it. Section 17, whatever. Kick the door in. First thing, the dog bolts flying out. Anyway, the dog's gone. I'm like, I'm not right. Okay, so the dog doesn't want to be here. And I remember taking those first steps into the house, and it's the things like the carpet. You remember this, and this was 24 years ago.
Yeah, it's just burned in your brain, isn't it?
Burned in your brain. Yeah, first sort of. Obviously you've been to hundreds since, hundreds of incidents, but that first one, and I put my foot in this, watery carpet, slushing, thinking there's water, and I can see water running down the stairs. So I think it's got to be upstairs. Whatever this is, it's got to be upstairs. So I start to make my way up the stairs, and I'm approaching what I can obviously see is the bathroom door, and there's water still running out. I'm surprised he didn't get out of the house, actually. And I'm thinking, what am I going to see? And yeah, sure enough, I push open the door. I see a toilet, and then the bath to my left, and I see a pair of legs stuck out the bath, and water overflowing the bath.
Oh, I left the taps on.
You've got it, running a bath or something like that. So whoever...
Please tell me it wasn't the hot tap.
No, I don't. See, by that point, I was already like, oh my God, what do I do? Do I interrupt my crew or my section, from their breakfast? What do I do? I'm going to call this in. You've been trained for this stuff, but you don't know what you're going to see, right?
You never know. You can't prepare for how you feel when you actually do it. It's like doing karate in your spare time and then having a street fight. You don't really feel prepared until you've had a few street fights.
Yeah. And I suppose for me, it was that moment when I thought, this is on me now. I'm a new cop. I've got to start making some decisions.
Yeah.
I've got to deal with this serious incident. Because up until then, I probably, I'd had some arrests.
Cops and robbers till then, yeah.
Exactly. And I'd done my first arrest, and I was trying to, but it never really the seriousness, of a deceased person and dealing with it. And then, I won't go on about it, but, calling back then, obviously, the undertaker's out and trying to get this person out of the bath who'd been in a bath for a long time. Searching the house, trying to find family details so we can pass on to someone who's going to inform the death message to the family, and all that stuff that entailed. But yeah, that moment.
Did you do the death message yourself?
No, not that one. And I don't think at that point I had done a death message. I think I was sort of spared that quite early on. Later on, obviously, I did lots, but at that point, I didn't have to face the poor family or the relatives that were going to get the message, or in fact be the officer that had to deliver it. Right. So that was me.
Yeah.
That was when it got real for me. Early turn that I didn't expect. And no, I didn't have my breakfast, if anyone wants to know. I didn't get back. I didn't really want it.
Yeah, I think that would have put me off. Human soup. I think I'll pass, thanks.
So that really was my day. And for me at 21.
That's a pretty rough one to go to start with as well. You don't see those every day in the police. We got to be careful, like, not to give the impression that every day you're going out to the most grim and macabre things out there. I always a great way of thinking of it is like you maybe meet 100 people and it's hello, it goes without instant hello, and then you have a crazy person that's like really shouty and like 2 minutes of like craziness, and then it's hello, and most 99 jobs out of 100 are humdrum, boring jobs, and you remember the big ones like punctuation throughout the story, don't you? They're the bits that stand out amongst it. But sometimes even the humdrum jobs can be interesting. Not everything has to be sort of super action. What you were saying about going through the house and working out what the person's name is, that actually is harder than you think. If you go to someone's house, you've never been there before, not everyone keeps all their letters and things, and you think, who is this person? And, we used to look around, you can't get into their computers or anything because it's all password protected. So who keeps a diary and writes the names of their friends and family in it anymore? So that actually, it's really difficult. If that person goes, and we get it, I used to get it with like runners. You'd find someone who's collapsed in the woods, and you're like, well, I can't get in their phone. There's no way of knowing who they are. So you'd end up, and you'd have to wait until the missing person report came in to let you know. So
Yeah.
the fact you was able to find the family and that was actually good as well. That's
It was, yeah. I mean, we're going back some years, right? They still have like, he still had like a flip up address book.
oh
I
really?
remember,
Is that how you found
by
it?
the telephone, like
Yeah.
that's how old we're going. But yeah, so we use that. Yeah, I, had that. But
So how did this happen then? Can you remember? So like just
yeah,
broaden it out a
so
little bit. How can it happen that
so
someone could be
following
forgotten like
the,
that?
conscious, these are real people that involved and so on. But from the coroner's inquest, they think it was a heart attack whilst running a bath,
Oh goodness.
and then stayed there. A body in water and what that can do. We had all that to deal with and stuff.
Yeah.
You remember certain things throughout your career and like the defining ones, and that's it. And other things you forget. But you're quite right. Every day is different. You can have a couple of mundane days, and then bang, there's a call, and all of a sudden it's something big, or it's to you, or it's something you're not going to see. It's a new experience. And I think some people don't realize just how many deaths that police go to.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, everyone thinks, oh, a cop's is out to nick someone, or is out to issue whatever it is. Okay, so when would you say it got real for you, Steve? When did the job get real in those early years?
Well, I was just thinking about that while you was talking about yours, and I think mine was the first, like when you said sort of it was all a game and a bit of a cops and robbers type feeling. The first time it got real for me was I got dispatched to a call. It was a attempted GBH. Some guy had punched his missus in the pub and then had gone home, they believed, and they'd allocated me and a colleague to go and knock the door, see if he's there. If he's there, arrest him, seize his clothes, etc. for this job. So we go there. It's a real rough estate, rough block of flats. Go in, go up the stairs, get to the flat that's the one in question, and I knock on the door, and no answer. So I say, "Oh, there's no one there." So we start going down the stairs, and I was quite overweight then, so I was puffed out and sweaty by the time I even got to the top of the sort of second or third set of stairs.
Yeah.
And then a neighbour just come out. He went, "He is in there. I've seen him." And I went, "When did you see him?" "About a minute ago. He went in there just before you did." And I was like, "Okay, well, we know he's in there then." So I go back to the door, knock on the door and go, "I know you're in there. You've been seen. So just open up and let's get this sorted out." And he opens the door up and he's like, "Raw!" straight away. He's got a dog there with him, and he's going,
Yeah.
"Bite him, bite him, bite him."
Oh, no.
And I said, "If your dog comes near me, mate, I'm going to kick it one." And he's going, "Get him, attack!" And anyway, he's then sort of started stepping back into the flat. So I've stepped forward.
Yeah.
I'm saying, "Listen, you're going to be arrested, or you're under arrest on suspicion of GBH." And he's going, "You've got to take me first, mate." And I was with a female PC who, bless her, she was about 5'1", and about 8 stone soaked wet through. So she was very, very small. And she got her parva out straight away
Yeah.
and sprayed me in the face
Which
by
you'd be,
accident.
which you'd be justified in doing, right?
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
we all, one of the things you learn in the, you're taught in the police is, it's about justification for
Oh,
using
yeah,
force.
this
and
guy was definitely wanting to use violence.
whereas it might not have been justified if someone was 6 foot, whatever, but it probably sounded like it was if he came straight
Yeah.
out confrontation.
Oh, yeah, he'd already just been suspicion of GBH, so he's already suspected of a significantly violent offence.
Yeah, so you've got that.
I've then gone in, he's got his fists raised, going, "Come on then." And as I've gone round to put my hands on him to arrest him, the colleague I had sprayed, but accidentally got me instead.
That's more common than people realise.
I'm now blind and got a really violent man who's wanting to kill me. So I've got him in a headlock, and we've dropped and smashed through this coffee table onto the floor. And I'm trying to hold him down while I'm blind with the parva. I'm saying to my colleague, "Get help and get his legs." And then he's managed to get his hands up, and he managed to get his finger in or out like this, and fish hooked me. And he fish hooked me, and I had to have stitches all down the side of my mouth. But eventually we got patrol to come. I had to pin him down while blind, having him rip in my face. Eventually, I get him cuffed up, and my colleagues come along to help, and I had to go to the hospital and have the stitches done and stuff. But that was the first time I had to ring my missus afterwards, and I was only young. I was 21. I'd already been married a year, and I rung my missus and I said, I'm at the hospital. Don't worry, but I got fish hooked, and she really said, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And was
know,
that the first sort of time you'd had
yeah, I was
a
invincible till then.
yeah,
Up
yeah.
until then, I was the first one out the van. I was the first one to do any job. There was a warrant. I'll go violent because it wasn't real. Their
Mm,
violent markers and all that sort of stuff just seemed like, nothing. It was like, I'll be fine. I'll go in. And then suddenly someone did want to really hurt me. Like
yeah.
really hurt me. He would
Mm,
have killed me maybe if he could. He was off
mm.
his head on
And
whatever
they
it
didn't know,
was.
and he didn't know you from Adam, right? He
No.
didn't know who you were, knew nothing about you.
I've never
Literally, you're
experienced violence from somebody who
yeah,
had no reason to be violent towards me. I had
exactly.
done nothing. So the only thing the reason he wanted to kill me was what? His hate of the uniform? Or
Yeah, or maybe
I
knew
just
that it was
can't bring
coming, or
myself to ever be in that situation where I'd want to kill a stranger. All I was doing was going there and saying, "You've done this thing, we need to talk about it." He must have known he'd punched his missus in the face. Do you know what I mean? So he must have known it was going to come to that. But what did he think he was going to achieve by beating a copper
yeah,
or fighting with a copper? He will eventually get dealt with. So I struggled with that.
yeah,
That process in my head was the harder thing. Is like, he would have killed me for what?
mm,
Or he would have
yeah,
really hurt me, but for what?
mm,
He still would have got done for the crime. He wouldn't have got away with it. He would have just got more on top. And
yeah.
it
And
was
I
the
mean,
animalistic and the complete lack of awareness of what could happen as a consequence of the action. But I realised in that moment, sometimes people act and they really don't think about what the action will do.
yeah,
They just
yeah.
do it in that
Sort of
moment.
instinctive, isn't it? Animal
No,
instinct, sort of.
yeah, run up, punch
Mm,
someone in the face, and then you ask them, and they genuinely just don't know why they did it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
You see
that's
that? You've
hard
seen
to
that a lot.
justify. And I'm like, oh my God. And that was for me, that's when it got real. It was like, there are people out there that really want to hurt you and they won't
Yeah,
think twice about it and they will cry no tears if you die.
that's it. And
And
it
that
doesn't matter
suddenly
whether
was
you have a
real.
uniform.
And
Yeah,
then that was at the point where I was like, hang on a second, I'm not going to jump out the van first every time. I'm not going to do this I'm going to make sure I'm safe. Because last time I got fish hooked, and it done half focus the mind. I was like on the end of a
yeah,
hook, going,
yeah.
"Wow, I regret my life decisions."
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Your first sort of when you get assaulted for your first time, that's quite,
Yeah,
and that's a big one as well. Because
yeah. I think we should
normally
come
it
on
sort
to
of can
that
be.
one. Like, there's another topic maybe, but
No,
for
that's good.
certain, yeah. But that's that shiny thing as well. That's the
Mm,
inexperience there. And I was with another, and this is why I think experience in the police matters, because half the reason that happened, it wouldn't have happened at the end of my career. If
no,
I'd have done that after 10 years service, that whole situation would never have happened. I was with a female PC who was an excellent copper, just as capable as me, but we were both probationers, crewed up
yeah,
together,
yeah,
the blind leading the blind.
that's it.
So we had, we didn't play it right. What I would have done is I'd have sort of, you would have got back up to go to it, you would have held off, or you would have tried phoning him first and say, look, we're outside, come down, let's have a chat. Do you know what I mean? Rather than going into an alien environment and putting yourself in danger. But
Yeah,
you can't put a wise head on young shoulders. And in the
no,
police, I was a 20-year-old. I was full of beans. I was like, woohoo! They've given me a car to drive that I've stolen it. They've given me a badge that lets me go behind scenes. It's great.
yeah, yeah.
It was, as a 20-year-old, it was fantastic.
So that sort of reality of, you know, realizing you are actually vulnerable, is quite a profound moment, I should imagine, in terms of not just a learning experience to say, well, actually, I could really get hurt.
Yeah, I could die. I'd
Yeah.
never thought about dying before. I know that sounds stupid, but
Mm,
I'd always never had the time. I was always a really busy kid, always busy doing something and that. I'd never really contemplated dying or, what would happen. And then that was the first time I suddenly went, oh, I might not have gone home today.
yeah. Yeah.
And it weighed really heavy on me. It was as I say, it was the two things. It was oh, I could have been killed.
You talk about experience, right? And
Mm.
like how you would have dealt with it differently. Like until you've suffered that, it's almost a rite of passage. You have to go through that in the police, really. I mean, you can role play it out because we
Yeah,
used to do role plays in training and things like, but it's never the same. And you don't act the same. I
yeah.
mean, training can help you respond, but it's once you've had the experience, and we can look back now and we can say, God, of all, and perhaps we'll cover this in future podcasts. I'm sure we will come to this topic where what would I have done differently?
Yes. Oh,
If
I've
I
got
was going to
loads of
go
those.
there, what would I have done differently? Would I have actually just swallowed my pride and I would have called a colleague out to give me some assistance to help me navigate this first sudden death that I'd been to, or and the things that followed. Stop with the sort of bravado and everything else,
But
and it's
there's an
similar
element,
with
there's a balancing element with that, though, just to sort of push back a fraction on that, because one of the elements we have is sink or swim as well.
yeah,
And there is a time when you have to go and develop. And I can show you my way of doing it, and it won't work for you because
mm,
it doesn't fit with your personality. It doesn't fit with that. We used to call it patter, didn't we? You build your own patter up for dealing with people. So when you do a breath test or when you do a search, you have your own little way of doing it. But the only way in order to it's like you start with a square thing and then you round the edges,
yeah,
and the rounded edges is your color and your personality you add to it, and I think that makes a big difference.
yeah. I would say that that applies to many aspects of life as well. It's not
Oh
just the
yeah,
police. That's like in general. The more years you do get behind you, the more you realise that there's another way to deal with the situation,
yeah,
or you develop skills. Like I was known, right, for the guy who could talk people down. Right,
yeah,
because I'd almost, that's probably why I'm doing this podcast.
yeah.
I don't shut up sometimes. When I
Never.
go, well, no, yeah, exactly. But that was what I was known for, and you always had this sort of competing thing. Do
Yeah.
we wait 20 minutes for Gavin just to talk the absolute, like
Hind
any
legs off a
thought of,
donkey.
you've
Yeah.
got it, any thought of resistance out of this guy, or do we just go in, grab him, we get him in, get the next job?
But
And
that's
there
what
was always that
negotiators do,
competing.
don't they? Negotiators bore them to death. They
Yeah, yeah,
literally
yeah.
talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk until the person has just they've got over whatever was making them upset or angry. They've got over it
Yeah.
by the time you've talked about it and had a pizza and a chat and I'm on Gav's an all right bloke and that. It seems much more tempting to go and have a smoke, doesn't it, with Gav and have a chat than kill yourself or do whatever. So it's just a time and a chat, isn't it?
And when you're young, sort of coming back to that first, few incidents you've been to, you just don't have that filter. You just don't have that experience. But knowing that you don't have it, I think is quite important, because then if you don't have that experience, you don't need to necessarily try and hide that you don't know. Try. One of the things I learned quite early on is do confide in a colleague, do
Yeah.
speak to a colleague, do try and get their advice, don't just hide it, just because they've all been there.
Yeah.
Everyone's been there. I don't care what officer you are, where you are now. You've been at that point where I haven't handled this situation before. This could go very wrong. And do I call someone for help,
Yeah.
or do I not? And if I call for someone for help, I don't. There's no shame in that, and you spend a long time sort of building that up, and
Yeah.
it's not an easy
I
thing
think
to
that's
do.
been. I think that's universal. I think there's people out there in all jobs struggling away, worried that people will think they're stupid, or worried that
Yeah.
people will think they're not as good as the others there. And I think imposter syndrome plays a really important part of police training and training for any kind of thing like paramedics or something like that. You are the expert in the room as far as people are concerned. They call
Yeah.
the police,
And
you
they're looking
turn
to
up,
you.
they expect you to sort it out. They don't care if you're happy or sad or if your mum's just died. They want you to turn up and fix their problem. And if you don't, as quick and efficiently as possible, then you're the problem and you're the reason that everything's rubbish and that, because it's easy to vent at a faceless organisation. Do you know what I mean? Rather than be angry at the situation in their life they find
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for a 22-year-old to turn up and go and sat there with a 50-year-old man and a woman who've just had a blazing domestic. They've got 2 kids and the man's on his second marriage. Like, what has he got in common with a 22-year-old that finished uni and went straight into the police?
And that's and they can see it on your face as well, because you can see that somebody's young, right?
Yeah.
So they haven't got a huge amount of experience behind them in the police and in life. I think that, as I say, the message there is when you're new, you have these feelings. You don't know it all, and if you go in thinking you know it all, you're going to have a nasty surprise, and you're going to have a real wake up call. Whether it's dealing with a violent offender, whether it's experiencing, a decomposing body,
Yeah.
they're all new experiences, and it's okay
Mm,
to not be okay,
yeah,
and not it's okay to share it, not
yeah.
hide it. So can you think of another incident that you attended and yeah, it sort of woke you up?
Oh, well, yes, I wrote about them. So before we did this podcast, and gratefully, like, you saw a couple of the things I wrote and reached out to me, and hence the podcast was born, which I'm really excited about. One of the ones that I wrote the first time was about a fire I went to. And I remember it was my first patrol ever. And I'd never even sort of been out on the police or anything at all. And I wasn't really even a police officer. I was just observing. You know, you go out for a little attachment, you do a shift to go and see
Yeah,
what it's like.
yeah, I did that.
So I walked into the station, went to this old sweat officer who was scary as hell. And he went to me, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to do nothing. You've got two jobs to do. One is if the phone rings, you push the green button. He said, if we get an immediate call, he said, you look in the map book and tell me where we're going. Other than that, shut your mouth and watch. And that was it, right? And I was like, oh, thanks a bunch. I'm
Welcome.
really welcome to the police station. So we get in the car and there's a fire comes up. And I said to him, well, why are we going to a fire? I said, I thought that's for a fire brigade. He said, what did I tell you? And I went, all right.
Oh dear, he shuts you down
He
straight
went,
away.
and he
doesn't
went, we go when there's a body. And I was like, oh, okay. Right, there's a body at this one then. So off we
Yeah.
go. And we get to get to the job, and it's all done. You know, building smouldering. It's like a bungalow, smouldering. Next to it, you've got the fire engine part. There's water, and everyone's milling around there, rolling the hoses up. And like always, you look for the guy in the white helmet. He's the one in charge normally. So we head over, and he says, "Yeah," he said, "it's all dealt with. Not suspicious." He said, "The old dear's had a heart attack, and she's fallen onto the electric cooker."
Oh dear.
And then
Okay.
caught on fire and set the house alight.
Wow.
And I went, oh, that sounds awful. And they went, go and look. And I went, what? He went, go and look. He said, I want you to go and see that. He said, you need to see this. So I went, oh, okay. So I went down there, and I remember, and I got to this door, and like you say, vivid. It was a frosted glass, old-fashioned aluminium door with a brown handle. And I remember I took the handle and I opened it, and as I opened it, there was like, I saw these little brown dolly shoes, like on this 2 feet, perfect, like perfectly polished, looked lovely. And then as I went up, there was like these old lady stockings. Do you know what I mean? And then as I got to her knees, they went black. And as she got to the top, she looked like the mummy out of the museum. And it's like, so it was where when people get burned, obviously all their sinews and muscles calm, and it goes into like a fetal position. And I remember just looking, and I didn't know what to think. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel like I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. It was so beyond.
Anything you'd seen.
Yeah, I had no frame of reference really. That's
No.
why the only thing I can think of is a mummy in a museum, really. Because luckily this person hadn't burned to death; they were already dead, and
Yeah. Which
just.
would have been comfort, right, to
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the
The heart attack was
relatives.
so
Yeah.
catastrophic. You mean
Yeah.
you fall on a hot plate, even if there's any life in you, you would get off of it, wouldn't
Of
you?
course
So,
you would. Yeah.
so she was gone already. It was just unfortunate. And but yeah, and I come outside, and they went, "What do you think of that then?" And it was almost like they were trying to get me. Do you know what I mean? And I went, "Is that all you got?" I said, "You can give me I said I could do 10 of those." And I remember in my head thinking,
Thinking,
like, I need
no.
to talk about this really and just sort of talk. And the fireman, I think, like, if I was that copper or fireman, I would have said, right, I want you to come and talk to the fireman now. Okay, like, you're new to this, Steve. John, the fireman, can you explain why the body has gone the way it's done? And then he would say, oh, it's burnt and the sinews have done this, that, the other. And then reassured me that it was natural and this is what happens and stuff. But instead, I had to sort of work that out for myself. And
Yeah.
that's not me criticising, because the guy's not my counsellor. He was just told, you got to take someone out. I don't know if he's had to have the last person he had might have been a right pain in the butt, and he's thinking, oh
Yeah.
God, not again. So you never know what his day was doing.
No.
But that one sticks in my mind because it was the first one. It was the first time I'd ever seen any death, and it was the fact that the legs were perfect. The
Yeah.
only bit
Yeah.
untouched, completely untouched, and it did stick with me. But the last thing on that is that you talk about smells and things. When I went to in the evening, it was the father-in-law's birthday, And we said, let's go to the Harvester because that was his favourite. And I just couldn't eat the flame grilled smell.
No. Well, that's it.
It was like
And
up my nose for weeks.
yeah, so and that's another thing you learn early on is you don't you take it home with you, right?
Yeah.
It's not a job where you put it on a shelf for the
Well,
next
I
day.
didn't actually tell my
You
wife. I
yeah.
got home and I was like, this isn't nice conversation for the dinner table or anything. And how do you explain to her? Oh, I don't fancy the flame grilled chicken today. You know,
And
do you know what I mean? It's
you're not
like,
going to tell
so
your
you just
well,
have
you
to
don't.
keep it in. Who wants to
Yeah,
hear that?
especially stuff like that, and as a young person going to it as well. Again,
Yeah,
and I'd say young. I mean, people say, "Well, anyone who went to that, right?" Well, no, actually not. If you've
yeah,
done 10 years,
yeah. I
you've
wouldn't be
got to a
particularly
point where
phased
you've
now.
seen time and time again. You've seen stuff, and the trauma. I say lessons, but the way you cope with it changes, and it's it becomes run of the mill, and that's all I can. That's the only way I
Yeah.
can say it. But you don't realise till after you're out
Well,
that actually you
I
may
think
have
of it
been
like
affected.
surgery. I think of it like surgery. A surgeon doesn't start by open heart surgery. They'll start with removing a wart, or they'll start with like a little bit, and then
Mm,
they get more and more. I don't think any surgeon could just go and slice someone up the middle and start doing that. Do you know what I mean? That is the end stage of a long period of time of being exposed to it, being taught about it, and that kind of builds the
absolutely.
resilience you require in order to do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and that's a great lesson there as well. Obviously the job changed over time.
mm,
You wouldn't certainly when I joined, how officers spoke to each other has probably changed quite significantly in that time when it's in the group. Because I think the force. What I mean by that is I think the force became more open. It became you didn't have officers saying don't talk about it. You didn't have officers saying I don't want to hear it. You didn't have you didn't like certainly by the end of my career we were very much focused on talking about it, debriefs. See,
yes,
I remember
debriefing.
at the beginning we never went to debriefs.
No.
We never discussed the incident. We always just were expected to deal with it and
Mm,
move on to the next one. If
yeah.
we had time, if it was a major incident, okay, there probably would have been, but not just your run of the mill stuff.
No.
And no one debriefed really. You going to a sudden death, a couple of sudden death, or a fatal crash.
Mm,
I was hardly ever debriefed over the fatal crashes that I was
no.
first on scene for. You just
And I don't know. And as I say, I still don't know if that is the right option because sometimes opening all that mental health stuff as well can be like opening Pandora's box, and you end up with, well, the force have got to walk a tight line. If they're sending people to jobs that traumatize them and then they have to counsel them afterwards, eventually it gets to the point, should we be sending these people to these jobs? And then you're questioning what you're here for. Do you know what I mean? The
yeah.
purpose of the police is to be a shield between you and the public, and inevitably ultimately to give your life. My job was to protect the public at all costs, and then make a judgment call whether I'm willing to risk my life to do that. I didn't have to. It wasn't made of me. Like, ultimately I have a right to preserve my own life, but how many times did you risk your life for others during that job? I did, many times.
Yeah, well, certainly in that you didn't know, and everyone knew someone, right?
Yeah,
Everyone knew of the copper who it went wrong
yeah.
for, who lost their life,
Well, I know
or
a guy, and it was public, and he was doing road directions, and he got hit by a car, and he was a great guy. I worked with him in the control room,
mm,
and then he went over, and he was based at an area, and yeah, he was a really liked by his
mm.
team, and that was it.
So yeah, there is a
Road
real
closure.
reality there
You think it's going to
of
be the domestic that gets you,
mm,
or the terrorist incident. You don't think it's just going to be
no.
directing traffic. And that's what I found so hard about him passing away, is because he was just directing traffic.
Being young in general, you feel invincible.
Yeah,
You feel like it's not going to be you. It's always the other person.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not going to be me. When I go to that, I ring on that doorbell. Someone's not going to open and come and throttle me. That's
Yeah.
my mate. That's the other colleague.
Well, and I had
I'll,
been doing it 18 months before,
yeah.
and without any issues. Every time I'd gone to arrest someone, it had gone without hassle. You have a bit of a ruck and stuff. It had gone perfectly every time. So it only served to make me more confident, more arrogant that I could deal with anything.
Yeah.
And then you really meet a nasty bastard, and everything changes.
So talking about that new experience, when everything got real, there's another one that I went to. I just got my you couldn't have written this. I'd just been made independent. And independent back then was basically you were given keys to a police car, right?
Yeah.
You could go to a call
A
by
Fabia.
yourself.
My very own Fabia that I could drive
Yeah,
around.
you've got
But you're not allowed to turn the
I think it was
lights on.
Peugeots back then. I'm that old.
Oh,
It was
yeah, you're an old
Peugeots.
man, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm an old man. But yeah, and we got a call, and long story short, because there's limited detail I can talk about it, but somebody had been shot in the head in a vehicle, and it never came in as that. It came in as something like, oh, there's
Headache.
someone running around with a BB gun. In this area, can you go to it? And we're like, oh yeah, we deal with a kid with a BB gun, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I jumped in with a couple of others, and we drove there. One of the cops was very experienced actually, which was very useful. But we parked outside, and I never forget looking over a hedge and seeing everyone gathered around this vehicle, and we're us ducking down and running to the car, and then finding this person shot in the side of their head. And
What,
and
murder?
obviously, so it was a murder, yeah. But I can't really talk too much about it. But what
there's
I
more
can
info
say is that after it bugged me, it really bugged. And do you know what it was? It was, and I actually spoke to somebody about this. It was never the scene that I saw. For some reason, that wasn't the thing that was resonating me. It's the fact that I ducked down and I ran across, and I later found out that the shooter, we were literally minutes behind the shooter who had run off. And I thought I could have got shot. And this is I know it sounds a selfish.
Moat, it did exactly that. He waited for a copper and shot him in the face, didn't he?
Exactly. And you're like, and you go through all this stuff like that's a selfish thing to think. I should be thinking about this other person. But actually, no. I was thinking, I'm running across. I've got no. These were in the days when you didn't have stab vests. You had a white shirt. You had no protection or anything like that. And I ducked down and I ran. I thought I could. If the shooter there, they could have carried on. They would have seen us and they carried on. And that bugs you, right? And that goes. And
But did you feel brave doing that?
No, I didn't. I just remember thinking at the end of the shift because I used to smoke back then. I sat down on the edge, and it's the best cigarette I ever. I'm sorry, I should promote smoking, but it's the best cigarette I ever had. And I sat down after it and thinking, what has happened today? And
what did you take? What conclusion did you come to?
Well, I actually spoke to, I think they were welfare officers back then. But I spoke to someone about it. I said, look, I'm having these thoughts, and of course it came out. They're completely normal. And actually what came out about this, why didn't I react? Why didn't this scene that I've just seen affect me? And as a young cop, I couldn't fathom it. I thought, I should be really distressed by this. Yeah. This is a really distressing thing I've just seen. And there's people who are really upset by what's just happened. And they're there. And it hasn't. Why didn't it? Does that mean I'm a psychopath? Does that mean I'm a...
people even say to me about this, and they say to oh, why don't you get upset about other people, or you don't cry when films and stuff are on? And I did have some counselling years ago, and I asked this question, and they said it's not that, it's that just the level empathy gets triggered is so much higher, because if you had empathy for every single person or every single incident you went to, you'd be a quivering wreck. So basically you save what you get upset about for a few things, and you have to not let it all in. And I always thought that was exactly,
and perhaps it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, it resonates a lot.
Perhaps that's a defense mechanism as well. To say actually I'm not mentally, almost like what shock can do to a body. If you're injured, the best pain relief you can be is in shock. I mean, it could kill you, but the shock will prevent you feeling stuff. And perhaps that's the same with trauma. Who knows? So to leave everyone, I suppose, with a final message, Steve, what should it be? I think this idea that if you've ever started something and you feel out of your depth, we've all been there. Certainly officers, and those feelings that we had, and if you have them, that's completely normal. And don't be shy to share it.
And the fact that you feel vulnerable is normally a good signpost
Yeah.
that you are heading in the
You're
right
not a
direction.
psychopath.
Exactly.
And
You're heading in the right direction. So and that's all we can all hope for, really, isn't it? I
Absolutely.
think it's been really fun chatting today, Gav.
Yeah,
I
it's
hope
been a
people
good
have
one.
liked our first one. You know, we're not going to be the best straight away. Like we're just saying, confidence comes later. But we're doing our best with this podcast today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it would be great if you could give us a little bit of feedback, perhaps give us some suggestions of topics you want to cover,
Yeah, it's
or
a
you can
good
just ask
idea.
us any questions about us that you want to know. But one of the good things that you can do to help support us is to just give our Facebook page a little follow, and on our YouTube, give us a subscribe.
You'll find us on Spotify, Twitch, Instagram, and more.
Come join us. Tell your friends.